Okay, great. Thank you for that introduction, Julie. That was very nice. So the first thing I want to talk about here is what do we mean by AP freight allocation and add-ons? What does that terminology mean? And it is an enhancement that Infor had put into the software, and it works with our costing of trade payables through our AP Invoice Center for direct orders. So when we have a direct purchase order and it's tied to our direct sales order, we can have those two orders communicate back and forth. There is historical functionality that did that, and this enhancement just layers on top of it. So it's giving us more functionality. There are mandatory fields that are in place now. And again, those mandatory fields are really just tightening up the controls for us. We don't want to miss on passing freight to our customer when we're supposed to. And we want to have our actual freight dollars recorded so that we can do, valuable reporting on that. So with this new enhancement, we actually see additional logic with the freight terms type. So for example, are we expecting freight to come on that purchase order? Are we using FOB destination on that purchase order? And likewise on the sales order, is there going to be freight required on that sales order? Because we don't want to run invoice processing if we're still waiting for freight to be added on. The other part of this enhancement is around the tracking information. So a new screen was added to our purchase order inquiry that lists the tracking information, and that information passes over to our tied sales order, and I can see that from the sales order inquiry. So there's a lot that's packed into this enhancement, but our great part of it is allowing us to capture those freight costs and have the documents communicating back and forth the purchase order, sales order. So here is our agenda for today. We are going to talk about what it takes to activate the functionality. Frankly, it takes me longer to say that than to do it. The other setups that are involved in having our processing work, so what setups we need to get done first. We'll also do some entry and processing of transactions so that you can see what is going to be different from what you do today when you turn this on. And then after we complete all of the processing, we'll go in and look at, all right, well, what actually happened? And we'll do a summary overview as well, and then have a little time at the end for questions. I'm going to flip over to our Cloud Suite distribution. This is our central data tenant. So our first item is to activate the functionality. So we go out to our administrative options. I've just typed AO in the search. And once here, I navigate to vendors and invoice defaults. And I can see here, I've got a section for AP freight allocation, and it is currently checked. When any enhancement is delivered, it's always turned off. So the enhancement will come in with your regular updates to Cloud Suite, but you've got to turn it on to make it work. So that's a good policy to have in case there's anything you don't want to have turned on. But we just simply check that box. When we make a change, we click save. You'll get a pop-up where you have to put in a little message about why you're doing that change. And then you've got to log out and back in order for that change to take effect. So that is activation. Takes longer to talk about it than it does to do it. All right, so now what kind of setups do we need to do? What are those actual setups that we are going to do? Actually, let me flip back here so you can see the list. So here's which setups we're going to go through. We've got our sales order add-ons, our freight terms type, our billing setup. This is optional, but we'll show it here. Our customers and ship tos, and our vendors and our vendor ship froms. So these are the different settings that we will be going through. Our first one is our add-ons. So I pop out to our sales order entry add-on setup. and I can click search, and you'll have a lot of different setups in here, anything that you want to add on to a sales order. The new functionality with this enhancement is around this checkbox here that is called freight. So the way the enhancement works is it populates freight charges onto a sales order based on a criteria. But there are some times where you may have an agreement with the customer to say, hey, we're going to charge $10 on this order. And so we don't want this functionality to overwrite that agreed upon $10. And so the way that the functionality works is when this box is checked and we have a value not equal to 0 on the sales order for the add-on, the enhancement will not update the freight add-on for the sales order. So that is why we check it, so that we have the ability on an order by order basis to negotiate freight with our customers and not worry about this enhancement subsequently overriding it. So we check our freight here. Additionally, we have a report out there that gives us our table value setups. And so if I run this report, we'll see that there is a new column on our report that shows us that information. So we'll save that, we'll run it, we'll fire away here and look at our new report. So we can see our options page and then my new column of freight, and where I have that box checked, it says yes. So that is a new feature on that report. The next setup that we are going to cover are our freight terms type setup. And freight terms might be new to some of you, so we'll talk about those a little bit. So we'll take a look here at our freight terms. So I'll just pop into one of these so we can see the setups. But we have this terms type, and these are the terms types that are available. So prepaid and add, when that's on your customer, that means that you're paying the freight and you're passing it to the customer with an upcharge. For our destination, when that's on a customer, it means that you pay the freight and you don't charge your customer. When we have collect, that means the customer pays the freight on their account. Third party means that the customer is designating another company in which we'll bill freight charges to. And pickup means customer is going to pick up that. Now, the freight terms types are also on the vendor side, and it works the same way. The prepaid and add for a vendor means that your vendor is paying the freight and passing an upcharge to you. Destination means the vendor's paying the freight and not charging you. Collect means the vendor is going to bill your freight company of choice. Third party means you're designating a third party, which is going to get the freight bill. And pickup means that you're picking it up. So those are our different freight types. When we go to our report, our fancy report, we also see additional data around our freight terms type with a new column added there as well. So we will take a look at that one. And again, just, having the new functionality, we like to see our reports being modified. So we've got all that information at our fingertips. And so here, the new column that has been added is this one labeled type with these different codes. So A means prepaid and add, P means pickup, and so on and so forth. So that is what we see new on that report. The next setup we're going to talk about is our billing setup, and many of you are probably using that already. We've got different ways to use this billing setup. I'm going to demonstrate it with the ship via code. So I've set up this ship via code here, and what I'm saying is I want to take actual freight and do a 10% upcharge on it when I put it on my customer order. So I'm going to pad it by 10%. You can make that value whatever you want. You see we can do a flat rate per order as well. This charge freight on back orders is really cool. So if you have, subsequent suffixes 01, 02, 03, I can say, hey, once I've billed them on the 00 suffix, don't levy it any further. Or I can check that if I want to work that way. And so this is our billing setup. Again, it's optional for this process. I'm just going to show how we're doing a 10% upcharge. And that pulls from this billing record. Next up, we have our customers and ship tos. So we'll take a look at our customer, going out to ARSC. And we can see here on the ordering screen, I'll hit edit so we can see it a little better. We've got our freight terms. So this is coming from my freight terms setup. So we've got our freight terms defined here on our customer. You notice it is mandatory. It's got the red star. So if I didn't have something there and I tried to save this record, it would ding me. I would need to fill that in. So we see that as being mandatory. Then we also have our ship to record, so our ARSS. Go ahead and pull that up. And that is on the ordering tab. It's in a little different place than our customer, but it's over here on the left-hand side. We can see our freight terms, and it is required for the ship to as well. Oh, this is my Avalara address validation. So it's popping up here because I clicked save on the record. So it went out to Avalara and said, hey, your address here, I'm missing the 4-digit suffix to my zip code. So Avalara has that rooftop taxation where it has the zip code. And if you're interested in learning more about Avalara, which is our integrated product to assist with taxation, let me know or reach out to support@centraldata.com or Julie Zindel. We'd be happy to give you more information about that. We also have our vendor record, so our setup on our vendor record. So we can see that here on the ordering screen. It's right here, my vendor freight terms. And then we also have it on our vendor ship from as well. So we'll pop out to our ship from, bring that up. On our ship from, it is on the required screen here. So if we come down here, we can see it's right on our required screen. Okay, so that gets us through our setups. So our different setups that we need to do. If you are turning this on and you need to populate those freight terms types on your customers and vendors, in Cloud Suite Distribution, we have the functionality called mass maintenance, which is really great because it gives you the flexibility to create a set of data, pull it out of the software, make your edits that you need, and then upload the changes back into the software. So mass maintenance is really cool, and it adds so much flexibility for operators to be able to utilize these mass updates without having to know how to write progress code or to do a Q&D or something like that. And if you'd like more information on mass maintenance, we'd be happy to help you out with that as well. Okay, so let's get back to our PowerPoint. So our next section here is around entry and processing. So when we have those setups done on our customers and vendors, the users who are entering sales orders and purchase orders, they don't really see any difference. And purchase order receiving, they don't see any difference either. So it is nice that you can get this set up, you can have the controls tight, and have the freight flowing through how you want without it being really cumbersome for your operators to have to deal with that. So we're going to talk about what we see in sales order entry and purchase order entry. We will receive our PO and look at how things are updated. and then we'll enter and process our vendor invoice, and then go back and look at those sales orders and purchase orders to see how they've changed. Okay, so let's start with our sales order entry. So we'll come out to sales order entry, and we'll put in our customer and warehouse. And our information is defaulting here from my customer setup. I click next, and let's move over to the customer order settings. So here in the order settings, you see the freight terms, which is required with our little red asterisks, and it has defaulted here to prepaid and add. Now, one of the things that has happened with this functionality is in regards to this little itty bitty freight outbound field down here. Now, when the freight outbound field is checked, that's telling us, hey, we need to have outbound freight on this sales order to our customer. So when our terms type are prepay and add, that makes sense, because again, prepay and add means that you're paying the freight up front and then you're passing that freight to your customer with an upcharge. So if my customer is picking it up, for example, if I switch this to pickup and I scroll back down, you can see the freight outbound flag is now unchecked, right? Because Joe's Supply Company, Joe's driving up in his van and he's picking his stuff up. So we're not going to have freight outbound on this order. So I really love that the enhancement has taken into consideration these other things that we often kind of miss when we're, toggling changes to different things. But I'm going to flip this back to prepay and add, and then you can see my freight outbound here is checked. So I'll go ahead and choose save. And back on out. Okay, so now I'm to where I am going to enter my product on the line. Toggle over to advanced mode and put my product on. And I will click the sourcing button and make this a direct purchase order. So I am shipping this directly from my vendor to my customer. Prior to the modification, the ship via and the freight terms in this section down here always came from the vendor, or if I was using a ship from the vendor ship from. With this modification, there is additional logic that is built into it. So if the customer freight terms are pickup, it's going to know that the purchase order freight terms also needs to be pickup. So when we see our customer freight terms as pickup, third party, or collect, then the ship via and the freight terms from the sales order populate in here for our purchase order. Otherwise, it uses the standard settings and flows through as normal. But it's, again, just a nice way to make sure everybody's talking back and forth and we're processing as we expect. So I'll go ahead and choose submit and click add. So I have added my line item, and I can see down here that my purchase order was created. When I advance to the taxes and totals screen and click on add-ons, I can see here inside my add-ons, I don't have anything currently set up. If I added that freight add-on where I had the freight box checked in the setup, then and put in an amount not equal to 0, then that would stop my enhancement from passing freight back to this order. And again, that's used when you have a negotiation with your customer that you're going to do a set price. I also want to point out that the bill direct purchase order add-ons, I have that set to none. And I have that set to none. That is the previous functionality that does some of this. But I wanted to turn it off so I could just display the new functionality. But you do have the ability to work with, your add-ons and how they talk back and forth. And if you want more information about this functionality, just reach out. We'll let you know. Okay, so we can back out of here and click on finish. So our sales order has been entered. So we've got our sales order in there. All right, so now let's look at our purchase order. So I'm going to navigate to my purchase order entry. and maintain that PO that was created from my sales order. So I will click on next to go into my purchase order and next again. And now we want to see our purchase order settings. So here in the purchase order settings, I can see I've got my freight terms. And with this enhancement, there is some additional logic that works with freight terms and FOB destination. So if I change FOB destination to be collect, for example, we see that it's checked. Whereas if I have it set to prepay and add, I can see that it is unchecked. So, one of those things that we miss a lot as operators when we're making changes to orders, we don't think about all of the other downstream effects it can have. And this enhancement really helps us tighten those controls and get what we need. And the other thing that the enhancement does is if I come over here to our totals screen, I can see this freight expected checkbox. So this box is going to toggle on and off with my freight terms as well. So if I have prepay and add freight terms, or if I have third-party freight terms, then I'm going to see this box checked. Otherwise, it will be unchecked. All right. So I can go ahead and finish my order. Okay, so next up, again, I've entered my sales order. My purchase order was created. I'm going to receive my purchase order. So I come into receiving. I'll do my quick receive with my purchase order and choose a full receipt. It pops my journal box and my PO has been received in full. I see my message down here and click on Final Update. And okay. So now my final update has been completed. So if we look at what has happened to our purchase order and our sales order, so we'll start out with our purchase order. I can see that it has moved to the received stage. So prior to that, it was in the ordered stage. If I click on totals, I see all of I don't have, my add-on here is 0. I don't have that. And if I click on packages, which this is a new screen, there isn't any package information. Now let's look at our sales order. So we will put our sales order up in here. Our sales order has moved to the shipped stage. It was in the ordered stage before. If I click on my totals view, I can see down here in the add-ons, my actual freight is 0. I don't have any add-ons down here yet. And then I also have my packages screen that I'm seeing is blank as well. All right, so now we get to the fun part, right? The fun part of actually processing our vendor trade payable, our invoice. Whoever thought the fun part would be processing a trade payable, but here we are. We go into our vendor invoice center. This was previously called APEI for any of you that are on our on-premise version. So in our vendor invoice center, I pull up my group and click on new invoice. And one of the cool things is you can pop your purchase order in here and it populates your vendor information for you. So it makes it a little bit easier for processing, that's for sure. So we'll put in our invoice number here and we'll put in our amount. So our amount of our PO was $10. So I'll just pop back over here to show that. Our purchase order was $10. So for our purposes, and so we can see the math working, we will do an invoice for $11. So that's going to be $10 of product and $1 of freight. Okay, so $10 of product, $1 of freight. And then let's say my vendor invoice is dated 5/12. There are 3 new fields, they're down here, added with this enhancement. One is the ability to put on a check reference. The other is an internal reference, and these are just free flowing text fields. They are not required. You can put something in if you want, you don't have to. Then we also have mailroom date. And so that's the date that the mailroom actually received this document. And it is required, but it populates to today's date. So whether or not you want to use mailroom date, it populates there for you. And those are our 3 new fields with our enhancement. So I can go ahead and click on save, and it will take me into my purchase order header. So here in the purchase order header create, I can scroll on down and I see these new fields that are added for me. So I can put in my tracking information. I can update my ship via. And what's cool is if I update my ship via here, it goes back to the sales order and the purchase order and updates the ship via. So if my vendor ended up shipping at UPS, I can update this and it will go back through to my sales order and such. The third-party freight here is representative of something that is not being billed from your vendor. So I didn't include it in my $10 plus $1. I said they're billing me $1. But maybe if they had, multiple packages and they had, you knew you were getting a freight bill in the future, you can put it on here and it will actually update to the sales order through this process. The OE Freight add-on, that is telling me if that add-on currently exists on the sales order. And if I see something populated here that's not 0, then this enhancement is not going to update back to my sales order. All right, so that's what we've got new here. So I can go ahead and choose save. And you can see, my invoice amount is 11. And I've got $1 left over because it has costed $10 against my PO. So my $1 left over is that freight add-on. So I click here on add-ons and I'm going to do a new add-on and it's going to be for freight for $1. And I just click on save. So now I can see all of my proofs have gone down to 0, which is great. And I've got my freight add-on here as an expense. So I go ahead and back out and back out and then choose my invoice and final update. My journal opens. I click on update files so that it's updating and not just validating. And I choose save. And now my invoice has left the building, left the invoice center, which means it's gone into the updated stage. And there we go. All right, so moving on to our next section here is what actually updated and what other features are available to us through this enhancement. So we'll look at the sales order and the purchase order, also the AP transactions, and then we'll talk about what else we've got available to us through this enhancement. All right, so starting with our purchase order, come back over here. Click search so I can refresh my screen. So now you see that I have moved to the closed stage. So I have fully costed my purchase order and it has moved to the closed stage. When I click on totals, I can see here that I have $1 of freight that was added there. And when I click on packages, I can see my different packages that have come in here. So we've got here and here. This freight, it came in as 0 because I didn't populate the third-party freight. If I populate third-party freight, I'll see some values in here. The values all go to the first package. It doesn't ask you to split it between the two. It just all goes to that first package. Over in our sales order, I'm going to go ahead and click search to refresh. And I see it's still in the ship stage, which is what I expect. I haven't generated invoice processing yet, so it's still sitting in my shipped stage. But when I advance to the total screen and scroll down here to the add-ons, oh, I didn't get it. Why didn't I get it? Oh no, I should have gotten it. Well, we'll do another one and make sure that we get it. I must have missed something. I apologize. So we'll do another one and we'll get it. But we should see that here. And then on our packages, we'll see our package data has flown through for us. I needed to populate that third-party ship. That's where I'm missing it. So let's go ahead and do another one, and we'll breeze through it quickly because I want to show you how that third party comes in. So we will do our warehouse and our sales order. Boom, boom. And our sourcing. Our purchase order is a direct, and we submit. All right, and we add and finish. And we'll put our purchase order and receive it. And full receipt, final update. Okay, great. So now we'll come back into our vendor invoice center and we'll do a new invoice for our purchase order. And I've got to put in an invoice number, and we'll put in our amount and our date and save. And down here in our tracking and freight, we will put in our tracker number. And this time I will put my dollar in here and then we'll watch it come through. When I click on recalculate upcharge, I can see that it's using my ARSB record to calculate that. So if you see an incorrect amount here, you can actually fix your ARSB record and come back and click recalculate upcharge, and it will give you a new value here because it goes out to that ARSB record every time you hit recalculate. All right, so let's click save. We will put our add-on in. So our add-on for freight here, and save. Excellent, we're at all zeros. So now we can do our final update. Final, select, final update, and update, save. Excellent. So now if I come to my sales order, so this is going to be a new one, not the one we were looking at before, and into my totals and scroll down, now I can see it. Even I make mistakes. Don't tell my husband, please. But there we go. We've got our actual freight populated at $1, and we've got our freight add-on here at $1.10. So we are passing that through. If we look at our packages here on the sales order side, they are always going to be 0. But if we come over to our PO, it's going to be a different number. So let me bring that up. I can see on the packages here that we've got our freight to that first package. So it always rolls into that first package versus both. So we were able to pass that along to our sales order, which is very, very cool. All right, so now let's take a look at our accounts payable transaction. So what happened on our accounts payable? So if I come out to my vendor inquiry and bring up my vendor and click on transactions, I can see here my vendor transactions, and I've got a bunch out here. So we can see the one I just did with our check reference and internal reference. So it populates our information in here with our mailroom date. So we can see that here for display purposes. And with CSD, one of my favorite functionalities is the ability to export to Excel. So if you wanted to take this whole thing and dump it out to Excel, it's really easy to do that. And with Cloud Suite distribution, any place where you see a grid, you can actually have that export to Excel functionality, which is really great. The vendor invoice center is going to have that as well. I mean, I don't have anything in here, but if I did, I could do that. But any place that you've got that grid, you have the ability to export your data. Okay, fantastic. All right, so now some of our other updates that come along with this. So the purchase order purge program. So the data purge program is really beneficial for our on-premise clients, especially because you might be moving to Cloud Suite distribution. Do you want to bring over everything from 100 years ago? Maybe not. But in our purchase order purge program, it is now accommodating that new packages screen. So that new packages screen that we saw is actually a new table in the database that they've created, that Infor created. And so if we're purging the purchase order, we need to purge the package transactions as well. So here at Central Data, I do about one purge a month or maybe every other month, and I've been doing them for, geez, a decade now, I think. But the purging program for our on-premise clients, it really gives you a great benefit and coordination with a dump and load in performance. So when you go out to OEIO or sales order inquiry and you're doing a search for your sales orders and you're feeling it lag and your operators are complaining, we can do a data purge in conjunction with a dump and load, and you'll see it be screaming fast. So normally we pick a date out in the past. It can be 7 years, it can be 10 years, whatever you like, and we go through and purge, all of that stuff. And there's about 20 or so different purge programs, so it really does a good job of cleaning up, making your database smaller, and as space is finite when we're on premise. All right, another update is to that inbound BOD for the supplier invoice. So in the user area, we see the new fields added there. So again, just communicating electronically using those inbound BODs, we can just populate that data. It works out really nice. We also have our data conversion programs. So we've got customers and vendors and AP transactions. So when you are creating a whole bunch of customers or creating a whole bunch of vendors, these fields have been added into those data conversion programs to assist you in setting all of that up, which is really nice. So we see it in our customers, in our ship tos, in our vendors, in our ship froms, in our table values, so that's where we set up those freight terms, and then also in our accounts payable transactions. So we see it there as well. So some nice functionality with our freight, and there we go. So now we've made it to the questions part of our segment. So Julie, I'm not sure if we've gotten any questions yet or anything that I can answer.
We have not, not yet, but it may be that people were so in tune with your presentation, they didn't have time to type their questions yet. So we'll give you a couple of minutes to gather your thoughts and see if you can type in a question or two. And if not, we're always happy to answer questions after the fact. So if you think of something, if it's keeping you up tonight, and you think of a question you would have liked to have asked during the webinar, please just send it in to support@centraldata.com, and we will get back to you with an answer. I also will be sending out a recording of this webinar, and we actually have our own YouTube channel now. So note that every time we do one of these webinars, we're posting it on our Central Data YouTube channel. So you can go back and revisit any of the topics that we've done in the past couple years. Let's see if there's anything coming in. Not so far, Kristi. Okay, well, we did have a lot of people on the session today. Thank you, Kristi. You did a very excellent job, covered a lot of material. And we'll be sending this recording to you all, and to any that couldn't make it today from your organizations and they were registered, they'll also get the recording. All right, I guess we don't have any questions, Kristi. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We'll see you all in Palm Desert, California. Oh, here comes a question. Hold on. We might have one. We do have one from Christine. Yay. Okay, let me see if I can tell what it is. I see you have a question, but I don't see it yet, Christine. You're probably typing away. Okay. Does the order control whether the freight gets passed along?
Does the sales order control it? Yes, because it's coming based on the freight terms type. So when we specify that freight terms type, that's going to control it. So if the customer is normally prepay and add, but in this one particular time, it's going to be, collect or let's say it's destination. So destination means that you're paying the freight and you don't pass it to your customer. So in that case, we'll still pass the actual freight charge because that's important for us to know, but it's not going to put an add-on onto that sales order. So we'll see it in here on our total screen. We'll see the actual freight because we're, paying that. But down here, we will not have an add-on that's charged to the customer for that. So yes, it's defaulting in from your customer or from your ship to if you're using a ship to, but you can override it on an order by order basis. And as we saw, when we do that override, it changes our freight outbound checkbox for us. So if we're, changing it to pickup, they're coming to pick it up. We're not going to charge them freight because they're the ones picking it up. So yeah, definitely it can be on an order by order basis.
Okay. And Christine says, thank you. This is good for their e-commerce division. Okay, perfect. Thanks,
Great.
Christine. All right, I think that's it. So I will stop the recording, but thank you all for joining today. And thank you, Kristi, for the presentation.
Anytime.
And we'll
Have a
see
great
you
rest of the
soon.
day.
Okay, everybody. Bye-bye.